Hello and welcome to another edition of Billy's Books. Today we're going to do Victory City by Salman Rushdie. I have never read a Salman Rushdie book before. Even those famous ones I've never read. This one came out this year, 2023. It's a regular old novel, it's a standalone novel, and I like it. I didn't know what to expect with Salman Rushdie. I expected it to be some sort of heavy treatise or something like that. And it's clearly got some political underpinnings. But it's just a kind of a fun novel with a lot of humor. I mean, it's got a lot of worldly humor that insinuates a lot about our world today. But overall, it's a pleasant read. So the basic premise is that there's a girl gone goddess. This girl witnessed, I assume this is vaguely in ancient India, or at least distant India in the past. So this girl, her dad, and lots of other soldiers go to a war and they all die. And so obligatorily, her mom and all the other widows just voluntarily walk into a fire and kill themselves, leaving this girl, as an orphan. This girl as an orphan has a problem with that, and somehow she gets, she sort of becomes a goddess or gets embodied by a goddess and gets turned into, she gets her goddess name Pampa Campana, and she doesn't become immortal, but she ages much more slowly. She gives seeds to her brothers, and they sprinkle the seeds on an empty plain, and it becomes a new city which she grows, meaning they have all these sort of empty bodies grow, and she whispers in their ear their history, which they believe. It's an interesting thing, and they believe they really believe their own history and stuff like that. Then, as generations pass, they start to believe it as true, even though she comes back and says, no, I whispered it. But that's in the future. Anyway, the brothers try to take over the new city and called Biznaga. And they argue over who rules. And here's a discussion from page 19 that I think is funny. Dynamic isn't the same thing as regal, Hooka said, and I'm still the oldest. You say that as if it's some sort of commandment, Booka protested. Oldest goes first. Where does it say that? Where's that written down? Hooka's hand moved to the hilt of his sword. Here, he said. A bird flew across the sun. The earth itself took a deep breath. The gods, if there were any gods, stopped doing what they were doing and paid attention. Booka gave in. Okay, he said, raising his hands in surrender. You're my oldest brother, and I love you, and you go first. Thank you, said Hooka. I love you too. I'm going to do another quote from page 51. The lesser bros are sent off with some sexy, scary warrior ladies. The last paragraph of page 51. In the evenings, the three Sangamas took their meals in the royal tent with the three sisters. The brothers, coarsened by their outlaw lives, devoured heaped platters of roasted goat meat without any concern for religious niceties. Goats slathered in chilies that made the men's eyes water, and their heads sweat, and their copious hair stand on end. The women, by contrast, with grace and care, ate delicately flavored vegetables with the air of people who barely needed to eat. And yet it was plain to all six of them that these well-mannered angels were by far the more dangerous, and the men gazed upon them with an unfamiliar mixture of fear and desire, unable to express the desire because of the fear, and so, unmanned, tore into their goat legs with even more barbaric ferocity, hoping that this would give them at least the appearance of masculinity. It was not clear to them if this gastronomic performance made any kind of favorable impression on the ladies, whose expressions remained enigmatic, even obscure. See, I just love the way he writes. Here's another quote here I have right after. Let's go to war and bring peace to the land. Classic, not unlike our favorite emperor in Star Wars. We shall have peace. As I mentioned before, Pampa Campana outlived everybody. She aged 10 times slower, so her lovers would die. again and again in front of her, and she stayed young and beautiful as they went from babe to men to old men to death. Eventually, after a few generations, all those ingrates that she formed decided that they were going to have a more authoritarian society, and she was exiled to the forest. And she and some of her people she brought with her joined the forest and became part of the forest, and she was able to talk to the animals, as a lot of them were. Pampa sent some non-songbirds to spy back in Biznaga. She sent parrots to quote what they saw, and then she sent crows to interpret. And then both sets of birds would come back and report. The parrots would start out by saying, he said this, and the crows would step in, annoying the parrots, and say, what it really meant was this, which annoyed, yeah, I just said that. There's definitely a feminist vibe to this book, as you may have noticed from that last quote. The forward-looking daughters used magic, whereas the angry sons were closed-minded religious zealots. So, pretty subtle there. While they were in the forest, one of her daughters or granddaughters or great-great-great-great-great-daughters, since she lived so much longer, went deeper into the forest and hung out with the wild women. And when she came back, she reported on the arrival of the pink monkeys. I'm assuming that since these guys are Indian and they've already interacted with the Chinese, and also even met a Portuguese trader, this pink monkeys, I'm assuming they're the British. I'm just assuming that based on what I've heard. I'm going to give you another quote, since the quotes are the most fun thing to do. Page 159. I knew it, said Madhuri Devi, and fell to her knees. What are you doing? Pampa Campana cried. I'm worshipping you, Madhuri Devi said. Isn't that the right thing to do? Please don't, Pampa Campana said. I have lost one daughter to a foreigner and the sea, and left two behind in a forest. I see now that the task ahead of me will take many years, and maybe before it's done, my daughters will all be dead, and Helea Kote will be gone for sure. And maybe you will have come to the end of the road as well, and yet there's a thing in me that doesn't care about any of that, a thing that only cares about the task I have been set. I have turned away from my daughters as my mother turned away from me. That's not the kind of person you should revere. Get up off your knees at once. So I like Pampa Campana's self-awareness, and she seems kind of a half-deity, but still more down-to-earth than the regular down-to-earth humans that she works with. I'm going to give you one more quote, which is from the next page. It was by no means certain that the people would choose sophistication over barbarism. I think that could sum up the whole book. It's a very interesting book. It's kind of been labeled as sci-fi by some people, just because there's a lot of magic and throwing seeds that create cities and things like that, and clearly alternate history and pink monkeys and all. So as the first book I've ever read by Salman Rushdie, I'm enjoying it a great deal. It's a new book, it's contemporary, it feels contemporary, also ancient and timeless. What more can you ask for? If you can't do, review.